Welcome back. After significant policy changes by the Biden administration, customer experience has become a major focus for government. With updated guidelines and a clear directive to improve government services based on customers' needs, federal agencies are using technology to deliver streamlined, personalized, and digital services for the greater public. To discuss the most important technologies, such as cloud and artificial intelligence, combined with iterative human-centered design, how they can affect the customer experience in the future, we're pleased to be joined today by Charlie Thomas, Customer Experience Administrator of Trademarks at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Barbara Morton, Deputy Chief Veterans Experience Officer at the Veterans Administration, and Evan Davis, Senior Vice President, Finance and Homeland at Maximus. Thank you all for joining us today to be part of this conversation. As I mentioned, the Biden administration has prioritized customer experience as one of their top management agenda items. The goal is to try and match the customer experience that businesses provide to their customers worldwide. But government has some catch up to do. What do you see as the biggest accomplishments agencies have made so far, and what remains the biggest challenges ahead? Who wants to go first? Charlie, you want to go first?
Sure, be happy to. I think at a high level, just the increasing recognition that we as public servants and as federal agencies, we have customers. And then we have research methodologies to understand and define them, not from our internal perspective, but from their voice and what the data is telling us. I think that's a significant sign of progress, and there's a lot more to do, but that's a huge step because the term customer is a bit foreign for us in public sector, but is very applicable and useful.
Barbara, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I would add, first of all, thank you so much for having all of us here today. I couldn't agree more with my colleague, Charlie. And I think the cultural orientation, the cultural shifts, particularly in my organization, VA, has been a really incredible years-long journey. I think the CX executive order is sort of like the icing on the cake of so many of these efforts that have happened over many, many years by hundreds and thousands of public servants who are so excited about what government can be and what we imagine it to be for those that we serve. So I think the CXEO is incredible because it's sort of sweeping in its aspirational goals, helping us focus on experience as a core business discipline with trust as our North Star, but it's also incredibly tactical too. So it really hones in on particularly digital commitments by various secretaries and other leaders across agencies. So I think it actually plays across the cultural spectrum and also the very tactical implementation, which I think is a perfect recipe for any transformation.
Evan, over to you.
Sure, thanks, Ann. Yeah, Barbara and Charlie are spot on. Not only in the progress that we've seen across agencies, both prior to and as a result of the executive order, but Barbara, what you were talking about around that tactical nature, that we're really seeing from our side, agencies actively looking for those specific, often digital technical steps that can be implemented based on, to Charlie's point, that amalgamation of data that we're beginning to get in and take seriously in review. We think that's great. That you also asked what's next, what challenges still remain. And I think that tactical piece leads right into the big challenge, which is how to turn this desire into action. And we're beginning to see that across the board, some important steps taken. But at the highest level, that's the big next step is how to begin reliably putting that desire into play.
And Barbara, did you want to, I saw you nodding. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, no, it's an incredible movement. And I can tell you, I was just thinking as I was listening to Evan in particular, when I joined VA 16 years ago, I mean, there was a lot of focus at that time, understandably, on sort of core operational measures, which are incredibly important, right? Sort of for our case, the number of veterans patients seen, the number of claims processed, the timeliness of such. Those are all important operational drivers. But I think what we missed over time was the opportunity to understand different pain points and moments that matter most from the veteran's perspective. So what I've seen in the last number of years in our ecosystem here at VA is the dialogue and the conversation has changed. So not only are we talking about core operational measures as a measure of our performance, we're also talking about, well, how is this impacting the veteran experience, the family member, the caregiver, the survivor, all of those we serve? How is that impacting their experience with us? So I think what's happened over time, and again, the CXEO is sort of the icing on the cake for us, is normalizing the conversation that experience is a co-equal measure of our organizational performance, along with those key operational metrics as well.
Yeah, you heard both Barbara and Charlie talk about data there. And I think that's a huge part of the transformation that we're seeing. Barbara, you mentioned that 16 years ago, the focus was on these operational metrics. In large part, in my experience, that focus was there because those are the ones that were easy to track. Yeah. The data existed for, how long are calls taking and how many people are getting through to a call center and how quickly are we responding to email requests and so on. Those are the metrics that we all have. And Charlie, you talked about the new data coming in, able to take in huge amounts of qualitative data about experience and begin to take action on them. And I think it's taught us all that there are new metrics to look at and new ways to measure success if our goal is serve our mutual customers.
Yeah, and on the qualitative data point, it's harder both to collect, but then to maintain and analyze. But it is incredibly useful to bring us down, because we're at a macro level, really in the weeds. An accomplishment we had last year. It's not splashy, but that's in part why I want to share it, because it applies to every agency. You have a website. We saw in our qualitative data on our survey, in particular, small business owners, entrepreneurs, and inventors, those who are not trademark practitioners, were having a hard time on certain web pages about trademarks. We got a cross-functional team, including our plain language writers, to rewrite it using the qualitative data that we had in place. And then before we launched it, we tested it with real customers from that segment. And we also tested it with our frontline customer service representatives who are on a daily basis interacting with this segment of our customers. And then it led to, we had those quantitative metrics in place at a page level, simple thumbs up, thumbs down. But we are able to look at before, we're at around a 75% thumbs up. There's high variance there on the particular pages. And now we're above 90% on the pages that were redesigned. And again, there's some exceptions in there, but that was it. It was all driven by using qualitative data, which took a while. This was not a quick redesign, but it led to measurable results.
And I think that's a good lead into the journey maps that VA has employed as a way to guide the journey. Of course, do you want to talk a little bit about that process and other approaches, if other agencies are doing some other ways of mapping this work? Barbie, you want to start?
Sure, yeah, I'll get us started. So the journey map, I think, serves so many different, and again, sort of macro and sort of micro tactical purposes. And I can kind of start back in 2015. So the Veterans Experience Office was established in January 2015. And one of the first artifacts that was produced was VA's first ever, and probably one of government's first ever, Veterans Experience Journey Maps. And it was a total conversation changer. It was super transformational because it was a different way for us to sort of imagine how we might serve our customers, rather than focusing on our org charts and our org structure and our kind of vertical business lines. it really challenged us to think about, well, what matters most to a veteran along their life journey? And also, what are the pain points they experience? And how do we, VA, as an organization, fit in to their lives and moments that matter most? So that was sort of the macro, again, conversation changer, and really was a different way for us to think about ourselves. On a more sort of micro or tactical level, we've employed that to actually design sort of concrete programs and tools. And Evan was saying this at the outset. How do you translate insights into something concrete, bringing the concept from the clouds down to earth and actually making it real? And Charlie mentioned the same thing in his example. One of the things that we did, I'll give a quick use case, which is a low-tech use case, which I love to kind of share out, is when we did our patient experience journey map, we interviewed hundreds of veterans from across the country, different ages, genders, demographics, locations, really got a general sense in the healthcare experience with VA, what are those moments that matter most and what are those pain points? One of the things that fell out of that research, which I've talked about frequently, is that ease of navigation of a VA medical center was really difficult for veterans. That was a pain point for them. The power of human-centered design, again, just talking to your customers, is that it reveals these pain points that otherwise you wouldn't naturally see on an operational dashboard, right? So we talked about the interplay between operational measures, traditional measures, and experience measures. What human-centered design allows us to do is see those things that might be otherwise invisible to the naked eye. So ease of navigation was something that we wanted to focus on with our siblings in the Veterans Health Administration. Some facilities had greeter programs to respond to this pain point, but not all. So what we did is we worked with them to kind of brand and scale this program called the Red Coat Ambassador Program. Again, totally low-tech solution, which is a very simple way to have greeters at medical centers to help veterans and their families navigate. And of course, we wanted to measure the impact, evidence-based impact of design thinking and design doing. And so surveys before and after show a 4% increase in ease of navigation of a facility. So proof positive that this human-centered design methodology actually will deliver tangible improvements to your customers when you practice it.
Evan, I see you nodding. Do you want to comment on that?
Sure. It's such a fantastic example, Barbara, and it really fits into the larger pattern that we're seeing across agencies. One of the beauties of Journey Map is why it's been a consistently useful tool for agencies is in part because those operational metrics that we've talked about at length now, one of the dangers of them is how myopic they can be. That when you begin to look, when every part of an agency or all the people supporting that agency begin to look at the broad picture of how is the action I'm taking, how's the interaction that I'm involved with an agency's customers affected by the interactions that took place in the past, and how is it going to impact the interactions that take place in the future, you get a very different result, and you begin caring about very different things. And it allows you to make some changes to, hey, you know what? It turns out when my group sends this letter out that I think is very helpful in reminding them of something, it turns out all it does is generate a call on the back end, 8 days later. And perhaps if we could coordinate that and understand that it's going to do that, then is there a way to be more proactive about it and a way to help inform people through the whole process? We see it changing things across the board.
So Charlie, do you want to weigh in on journeys? And I know you gave one example just a couple minutes ago, but PTO has lots of interactions with lots of different kinds of customers.
Yeah, well, first, I love Barbara's example and the utility of the journey map. It revealed something that isn't going to show up operationally. Any one of your veterans who decides to go to the facility, they all walk through the door and have to figure out where to go. That's just wonderful. But to your question, Ann, thinking to a small customer experience team, which I lead within the trademarks office, the journey map and then the customer personas in particular are a nice way to kind of extend our team and our reach. Ideally, we'd love to have a CX practitioner, a designer on every team everywhere. We know practically speaking, that's usually not possible. And so providing those personas to our digital product teams has been really useful, because as they're making, design decisions, they have these personas or customer analyses to look back on to help inform even very minute details on how to label a form, how to design the workflow. So that's another way that we've seen a lot of value out of sharing that analysis that's been done.
And Barbara, I know that you have discussed the makings of a modern identity strategy when customers interact with government sites. And you've talked a little bit about how you take the data. What tools, can you talk a little bit about what tools are involved and how you make this successful?
Yeah, so interesting. So one of the things that we knew early on in the days of this office when it first sort of was established is that there's so much opportunity if you know who your customers are, right? And so we're lucky that we, VEO, are data stewards for certain contact information and identity data. And what that's allowed us to do is sort of respond to what veterans and other stakeholders tell us, which is, hey, it would be nice if VA kind of knew me and personalized communication. So I feel like it's not just sort of a one size fits all blast sort of communication, but it's maybe more tailored. And so we've been able to sort of work with our chief technology office and other stakeholders, particularly on the digital website, va.gov, and also VA's flagship mobile app, which is a new addition to our digital family, and really use that data to sort of create a customized VA profile. So a veteran can sort of log in and the things that you take for granted in the real world outside of government, your banking, your online accounts, veterans can now do that on the VA mobile app and also va.gov. Really easy for private industry to do, but it's something that it took us VA a while to get to, but we're now kind of hitting our stride. The other thing, as I mentioned too, is it's a key strategy for communications. So if we have, let's say, veterans in a certain part of the country, maybe they have had some sort of natural disaster or weather disaster, we can send targeted communications by zip code to certain veterans to make them aware of different resources. So unlocking the potential and the power of the identity that we know about and really being able to tailor communications and engagement, I think is something that's a demand signal that people expect nowadays and that we're continuing to build and deliver on.
Evan, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. That expectation is a huge change. Like Barbara, that desire for personalization in customers' interactions with their government is really only coming out in the last few years, and it is going to take a while for regulation to design to protect your customers. It's going to take a while for that to catch up to that demand, and that's okay. Some of what Charlie was talking around personas has been a useful tool in getting agencies part of the way there. But if you can't get fully to identity validated personalization, then the next best step along that path is to identify based on even just initial input from a caller or from an email, however a customer chooses to contact you, identifying their need and where they are in their experience with the agency, and using those personas to then figure out how best to serve them from there. So the work the VA has done has been incredible in approaching real, I'll call it commercial level personalization, through those identity tools. But we know that not all agencies are at the exact same place in that journey yet. But it's good to know that there are ways to approach that along the way.
Thank you. We all know that industry uses chatbots and AI to try to help online customers. In fact, anytime I go to a website, there's a little chat box open, and I wish sometimes I could swat it away. But how we know they work. How are public sector leaders utilizing emerging tech like artificial intelligence and machine learning to offer help to the wide range of viewers with different access. And Charlie, I think you guys have done some interesting work in this. So can I point this one over to you?
Sure, I'll get us started. So yes, USPTO has been prioritizing, trying to find innovative ways to utilize artificial intelligence and machine learning to support our personnel in the examination of patent and trademark filings. So just trying to find ways to create efficiencies that would hopefully lead to, providing results to our customers faster. On the public facing side, at the time that this recording goes live, we should have launched our USPTO virtual assistant. Now this is a beta. It will be launched on just 6 high traffic web pages about trademarks, in particular where they're going to find contact information to talk to the Trademark Assistance Center. So we've got a roadmap for evaluating the performance of the AI, training that algorithm, also measuring overall experience through a survey deployed afterwards. If the beta proves successful, it hits these gates that we've identified, then we're going to expand it to all web pages on trademarks. And then assuming, based on our metrics, are we providing value to customers, then the agency will determine perhaps we invest in this across the website. So I'm very excited about the method we're using. We're launching it. We've seen it be successful in other areas, but we know it. We can't just assume that for our customer base. And so that's really exciting. Check out the website, go to the trademarks landing page and try it out. And you can close it out if you don't want to use it.
Okay, I can get the bot gone. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that gets to the question about how you decide whether something is working or not, or if you're responding to the right needs. And I know agencies now are beginning to use surveys to capture customer feedback and satisfaction. Can you talk a little bit about how frequently you survey and how effective you find the data that you capture? Are people willing to give you feedback? Who wants to go first here? Barbara, if you want to go.
Yeah, I can chime in on that. So one of the initial capabilities that we built, and we're a shared service for the department. So we support healthcare benefits, memorial services, appeals, and sort of everything in between as veterans kind of come to us for different services and benefits. But one of the things that we wanted to start with was this sort of enterprise-wide real-time survey capability. So rewind in time, when I started at VA 16 years ago, I worked for a group called the Board of Veterans Appeals. And at the time we had customer satisfaction surveys, but they were sort of paper-based and they were lagging, right? So you might get an analysis of this bank of survey responses like 8 months later. At the time, that was sort of, the fastest, I think, approach to getting that feedback. But today, we have the technology to actually understand in real time what those experiences are. So one of the things that my office sponsors for the department, again, are these real-time surveys that we help kind of design and test. We design questions, test them with veterans to make sure we're getting, at the right sort of questions, moments that matter most to them. And then deployed across the field, you've got, employees from across the department who have access to these responses to do some service recovery. So if a veteran is having, let's say, a prescription refill issue, they can actually be contacted to sort of help triage and resolve it. But also the second component of it is it allows you to see enterprise-wide what are some common pain points, themes, hotspots that might need to be kind of taken a closer look at. So I do think that the technology has aided us in government so much, and I do think that that's sort of a core piece of any customer experience journey, is to actually have the capability and figure out how to utilize those survey responses. The last thing I'll say too is that we've really been able to kind of elevate experience and insights, particularly from human-centered design, but also from our surveys, to different levels of governance in the department. So we can kind of help inform thinking and decision-making with different policy issues. What is a veteran going to think about this? Or what has a veteran thought about that? So it's really begun to seep into the dialogue and thinking and decision-making here at VA.
I'd love to go back for a minute, about 10 minutes ago. So Charlie was talking about trademark website and redesign our pages. I mentioned something really important here. in addition to frequent surveys, like Barbara described, the ability to roll out new questions and track changes in near real time. The other thing Charlie and the team did was went directly to frontline agents.
Yep.
That we have found across the board, across agencies, that a wildly untapped source of qualitative data for understanding customer experience are unsurprisingly the people whose job it is to interact with a large number of customers in a short period of time. So if you want to know if a recent webpage change, a recent chat change, a recent legislative change is significantly impacting your customer base, you'll find that if you sit down with a panel of 6 to 8 of your frontline agents, they'll immediately be able to tell you a shift in tone, a shift in questions, a surprising spike in something odd that has occurred in very real time, because nowhere within the agency is there a closer finger on the pulse.
Good point. I know we have just a few minutes left, but I wanted to close up by talking about what the next challenge is that you see for customer experience. And I'll go around so that everybody gets a chance. But Charlie, do you want to talk about what's the next challenge?
Sure.
The mountain to climb?
And there could be a number of them. One is the term customer experience as a discipline, as a business practice. It's grown significantly, especially the last decade, both private sector and now in public sector, and for good reason. The methodologies work. If you take the time to understand your customers, you can improve service delivery. The challenge is I'm seeing increasing use of the term for any number of services available, initiatives that organizations are putting on. And so we need to be careful that we're using the term not just because it's being popularized, but because we are putting people at the center of the way that we think about and attempt to solve whatever problem an agency's mission is to solve. And so that's just being a little bit careful on that, taking the time to do the research and not get too ahead of ourselves.
Evan?
Yeah, I think the next big challenge is to be figuring out which fortunately there's some great models and templates among agencies today on how to do this, how to take the commercial tools and strategies, particularly on the digital and technical side, that work extremely well in the commercial space, and apply it to some of these critical functions of customer interaction for the federal government. Part of that trick is, even more so than in the commercial space, it is so crucial for agencies when they're giving information to their customers that it be exactly correct and exactly correct to the moment that they're giving it. There's not wiggle room when you're talking about issues that directly affect people's health and people's economic health, family health. It's crucial to get that right. Fortunately, we've seen a lot of success and had a lot of success beginning to implement those tools in a way that allows you to harness the power of commercial artificial intelligence and machine learning and so on, while still holding on to that core sort of inviolable knowledge base of data and information that you really want to give out to us.
And Barbara, you have the last word.
The last word, well, I think it really, for me, is going to boil down to how might we scale and how might we continue to sustain. So scaling and sustaining. Some of my brothers and sisters in government have armies of one who are customer experience champions, advocates, implementation, a team of one. So I think the scale is really important. We've been very fortunate at VA. We've been able to build our team and so have those resources. But we also started small. So I think that's really important. And then sustainment. So as we know, government is a very vibrant environment. You have lots of different leadership changes that happen over time, different administrations that come in over time. And so how do you sustain the momentum, the focus, the commitment the shared passion, shared purpose across different priority sets that may change over time. And I do believe, because we have an amazing community of CX practitioners and champions that have been built over many, many years, I think we'll be able to do it, but that's something I always keep my eye out for.
Well, thank you. I thank you all, Charles, Barbara, and Evan, for this really wonderful conversation. And I meant to say Charlie. After the break, we will continue our forecasting conversation with experts from the National Institute of Standards and Technology and GSA's Federal Acquisition Service. Be sure to get up, stretch, and get yourself a snack, but don't go too far. You're watching the inaugural GovExec Tech Forecast, the art of the possible. We'll be right back.